What is going on, everybody? Welcome and thanks for joining us live with Sweet. I am Amir, leading DeepBook marketing with around 3-ish years now within the Sweet ecosystem, and I am super excited to be here. Today's conversation is going to be a really good one. We're really going to get into DeepBook itself, Sweet's native on-chain liquidity layer, and how it's being used across the entirety of the ecosystem in a variety of different ways. For giving a little bit of context for the broader group here, DeepBook is not just an order book, it's shared infrastructure. It powers trading, liquidity, and more important, and really excitingly, increasing more advanced financial use cases on the suite. DeepBook Margin is really the first extension of that, enabling leverage, capital efficiency directly at the protocol layer. But it's not the only way that teams are building on DeepBook. So let's get into that with a little bit more clarity. I want to just call out that first, I'm being joined by an all-star crew of people here. We got Aslan from Miston Labs, who leads up DeepBook, and then we have the teams at Abyss and then Pebble. And I'm going to let them specifically introduce themselves in a bit. But before that, both of these projects are part of the broader DeepBook Points program, and both are using DeepBook in different capacities, as DeepBook really is the underlying engine that makes a lot of Sweet DeFi work. But by the end of the stream, what are we looking to get out of this? First, what is DeepBook enabling at the protocol level? What is it actually doing in the ecosystem? Like, what does it mean for Sweet DeFi? Second, how are different teams using it in different ways across the variety of different products here? And what does it mean for traders, builders on Sweet going forward? A lot of stuff to come in, but let's go and jump into it. Let's start with some intros. Maybe beyond myself, the real focus here is these three guys. Aslan, I'll let you go first.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, Amir. That was really good. I'm Aslan. I lead DeepBook, and we recently launched the margin extension and the points program, and I'm excited to dive in and talk more about that.
Sweet. Chris, let's go to you.
Hi, everyone. Super happy to be here. I'm leading business development partnership for Pebble. We are launching a leverage layer for Sweet DeFi in 4 weeks on the 2nd of March. So it will be very exciting news coming up.
Amazing. And then Cyrus?
Hey guys, I'm Cyrus. I'm the co-founder of Abyss. We've also launched very recently alongside Margin on DeepBook. Yeah, excited to be here and present what we've been building.
Yeah, what a freaking crew! I'm just here trying to catch up with these guys. You're going to get a really good amount of information related to DeepBook, Margin, everything. Like, this is going to be jam-packed with information. But let's start with this. Like, what is Margin? Like, Margin is definitely a new capability. It's definitely something that goes in a little bit more in depth related to what finance looks like and different ways to engage. And I really want to focusing on the big picture, making it super simple, making it so that people generally feel comfortable with the idea of understanding what it is and how it works. So with that, Aslan, I'd love to start with you. Let's start with some of the foundations and understanding beyond DeepBook. When we talk about Margin, like, what does that really mean? Like, let's make it super simple for people.
Yes. Okay. This is a great place to start. So, if we think about how finance works, generally speaking, it all boils down to two core primitives. One of them is trading with somebody else. So you are buying and selling, and this, has been around for, millennia, right? The trade. And the other one is borrowing money. So using collateral to borrow. And these two primitives really build everything else in our economies. If you actually look at what are all the financial systems have in the world right now, it all boils down to these two atomic units. And that is, how we're thinking about DeepBook and DeepBook Margin. Margin is essentially right now, its capability allows you to borrow from these margin pools to place leveraged orders on DeepBook. But there are a lot of downstream effects of Margin being enabled, and that's what we'll kind of be talking about here today, where you end up using the margin pools in a lot of other unique ways, not just for leverage trading, but also for creating other types of products. And this idea of two atomic economic units being combined in different ways to actually create different products is really what we're going to try to highlight today. But yeah, to be direct, central limit order book, that's where you trade. Margin is where you borrow and lend borrow and lend, and that's what enables the leverage trading component directly on DeepBook. And we'll be talking about Abyss and Pebble and understand exactly how they are combining these different, these different atomic units and creating actually totally new experiences altogether.
I love it. I love it. This is the directness is exactly what we're looking for today. The goal is that anyone that hops into this space is really able to walk away saying, I get it. Even if I'm a beginner trader, this makes intuitive sense to me. Obviously, everyone starts with the idea of simple trading, but we're now getting into the good stuff. We're getting into the exciting use cases, and we want to make sure that everyone just collectively gets it. Beyond that, is there anything that really kind of excites you in terms of like what this means in terms of being a step forward from what DeepBook was traditionally known as? How does this kind of impact what you're thinking about in terms of the future? What gets you excited about like what this launch means for DeepBook?
Yes, for sure. So first, DeepBook is the liquidity layer for Sui, and it is a public good. It's infrastructure that is here to make it so users, builders that want to build DeFi protocols can permissionlessly leverage this composable infrastructure to build things on top of it. And one of the things that we focus on is taking away the hard part of building DeFi protocols, which often comes down to liquidity and getting actual users to deposit capital into a lot of the components of the underlying infrastructure. So we solve the hard part and make that available as a public good infrastructure to all builders on Sui. Now, further, with the introduction of margin, we're actually, if you think about it this way, this is the first time a layer one has native leverage capabilities. In the past, if you look at other ecosystems, protocols usually are self-contained. There's not really a liquidity layer in other ecosystems that not only provide the trading capabilities, the liquidity, but also now provides the leverage. This is literally native leverage on Sui.
I love it. I love it. It's really interesting to be able to kind of dig into this and understand how the things connect. There were words that you used related to public good, being able to really expedite the path for a builder to get from really zero to the point of even revenue. Like those are really interesting stories and special things specifically for Sui. Now with that, like understanding a little bit more in terms of how DeepBook works and how margin ties into it, we now have a really exciting part to this where we're going to be focusing on having two super interesting partner demos. We're going to have Abyss go first, and then we're going to have Pebble go next. The goal of this is like to give a little bit of context for the group here. We're looking at around, let's say, 4 to 5 minutes. And what I'd love for you guys to really talk through is, what exactly is the application? How does it work? How does it tie, if it does, with margin specifically? And then where are we going in the future? The goal here is that we want to make it super simple, again, be super direct for people to understand when I actually want to engage in DeFi and when I want to engage in projects that are leveraging DeepBook, what does that actually look like? So with that, I'd love to start with Abyss. Would love to do, again, a 4 to 5 minute demo from you guys. With that, I'd love for Cyrus, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, sure, with pleasure. Thanks for having me. So I guess maybe we can quickly start by presenting, what our protocol does, and then afterwards I can go to showing you directly how it works, how to navigate through the protocol, the app, everything, and kind of walk through, how Abyss is built. So, our protocol is really centered around being really like the venue to leverage DeepBook entirely. We're really trying to build the stack of DeFi primitives, like new DeFi primitives on top of DeepBook. Where DeepBook is going to be kind of the foundation layer with the trading and the margin. We really want to leverage that and deploy new primitives on top of it for people to experience. And with that, we've built kind of two core components. So we have our trading venue, which allows users, to directly trade through DeepBook with whether it be through the spot order book or with margin. And then we have kind of this new primitive that we've introduced with our vaults, which are built on top of DeepBook's margin pools and allow like true composability for liquidity providers and users to be able to expose themselves to margin trading activity on top of DeepBook. So with that, let me see if I can share my screen. Let me know if it works well. You guys see my screen?
Let's see.
I'm not seeing it.
Nope. There we go.
There it is.
Perfect.
All right, awesome. So yeah, let's maybe start with margin vaults. So the way Abyss is structured is we really want this to be kind of a flywheel protocol where you can at the same time supply the liquidity to DeepBook and be able to interact and benefit from all the activity and the volume that goes on DeepBook and DeepBook margin, and that's why we have these margin vaults. So here you can see this is the Abyss, and then here we're on the vaults page. So we deployed vaults for the three main markets on DeepBook margin right now, which are SUI USDC, Deep USDC, and WAL USDC. So obviously the USDC vault is kind of combining the activity from these three markets, given that these three markets are denominated in USDC. And through this, users can deposit directly and supply liquidity directly to DeepBook margin. We think it's a really straightforward interface. It's simple. Just go hover over any of these vaults, click on deposit, and then whether it be SUI or let me maybe do the SUI one. Here you have a direct view of how much you would like to deposit and the amount of tokens that you're going to receive. And then this is really like the core component of these vaults, right? Like instead of just supplying liquidity, you're receiving this receipt token, which is in this case going to be a SUI, or in the case of USDC, going to be DBUSDC. And these tokens are then fully composable, similar to a traditional token, and you can just use them in the rest of DeFi, right? So maybe like Pebble will be explaining afterwards, DBUSDC can be leveraged through other protocols, building like these new primitives on top of stablecoins and yield-bearing stablecoins, which we really think are awesome. It's super straightforward. Just deploy, deposit the amount of SUI, just sign the transaction, and then you'll receive in your wallet. You'll be receiving directly, the equivalent ASUI, and should show up over here. Well, here you can see I already have a deep, and it just shows up here, and you can use it in any supported protocol. And then for withdrawing, same thing. The yield builds on top of the tokens. So the value, you don't earn extra tokens. The value of the token just increases. So when you go to withdraw, you just receive proportional amounts. You receive a proportional amount of tokens with the extra yield earned on top of that. Then the second core component of our app is really going to be the trading. So on Abyss, you're able to trade directly through DeepBook. So here you have a full snapshot of the current order book and the current trades that are going on. And all of this is streamed in a near instant way. So all of this is really responsive and really quick. And to trade, all you have to do is, so here I already have balance manager, but if you don't have any, you can just create one. And then this allows you to basically deposit. So you can deposit tokens into your balance manager. So, say I wanted to let's just add some deep. I already have some USDC and some SUI, but I can add some deep. And then here afterwards is, we really tried to make it similar to the way traditional centralized exchanges are built, where, people are already familiar with those kinds of venues. So, you have the traditional buy and sell. So say you want to sell, I want to sell 2 SUI, for example, just input that amount here. And then when you click on sell, that amount is directly deposited into your spot account. And then it allows you to really isolate, the funds that you're trading with, and that spot account is then used for every market on the Abyss. So any DeepBook supported market that we have here, you're going to be using the same spot account basically. And obviously you can also pay your fees with Deep, and we have a bunch of new and exciting features coming soon as well. So beyond market, you can also obviously place limit orders and everything, and all of this is we tried to make it in a very familiar and easy to use way. So then where it gets interesting is if you go in these markets here, you can see you have this small spot tab, and if you want to be able to trade on margin, all you have to do is switch to margin here, and then the interface changes, and then here you see we have access to the SUI USDC, Deep USDC, and Wall USDC supported markets. And then here, the main difference is this leverage slider, obviously. So where it gets interesting is here, you have same concept as for spot trading. You're going to have in margin trading, you're going to have a margin account. That margin account is where it differs with the spot account is that it's going to be isolated to this specific market. So in this case, it's going to be SUI USDC. But again, the functionality is the same. You just deposit the assets that you want, and you withdraw the assets in the same way, and then you trade with the assets that are in your spot account, basically. And so, for example, say you wanna. In this case, we have some SUI. If you want to go, you want to lever up and go short SUI or long SUI, depending on the assets that you have. You just set the leverage amounts. Set the amount you want to be trading with. In this case, you can set a limit order, but for the sake, you can say you can also place a direct market order, and then when you place a market order here, that directly translates to an open position, where we consider a position to be open if margin is involved in the trading. So if I sell SUI here, this amount here takes into account the amount of SUI that I have in my margin account times, in this case, 4 with this, which is what I selected up here. And then basically, if I click on sell, then that position opens up, and then in this section here, you can directly see the amount of borrowed assets or debt, which are going to be borrowed to open that short position or that long position. So in the future, what we're also going to be introducing is going to be, like a much more manual approach where people can directly borrow the specific amounts. In this case here, we tried to simplify things by having this notion of a position where the user can go short or long. And when they go short, if they go short, for example, you're going to be borrowing SUI and selling it for USDC. And if if you go long, you're going to be depositing USDC and then borrowing, and the app is automatically going to borrow the amount of USDC and buy SUI with it in all in one transaction, basically. To avoid having users to have to manage the amount of funds that they borrow, etc. And we think it's a more straightforward and more familiar approach to fully manual approach. But then obviously, that's something that we're also planning on bringing afterwards for more advanced users. And then recently, we also added up here a way to track your points. So if you're farming DeepBook points through Abyss or through any other protocol, the points that you've earned associated to that specific wallet are going to show up here. And as you can see here, I've earned 231 DeepBook points. You can always click it, and then they'll bring you to the DeepBook points homepage. We also have a swap interface if you're interested. Place swap orders, limit orders on tokens that might not be supported on DeepBook yet. So if you want to trade Navi, Ika, Sen, that's also a possibility. So,
yeah, this is great. This is super in depth, and I love it. And it's very, very hands on in terms of how to engage. So I guess maybe one quick follow on for you. So Margin has now been live for a couple weeks now, and you've probably gotten feedback in terms of what the experience has been like. And if we assume that there's a pretty good amount of people in this space right now that are relatively new, maybe to trading or like to DeFi more broadly, like what have been some of those like user experience gotchas or learnings or things like that are worth this audience having a better understanding of when they think about maybe looking at Margin for the first time?
Yeah, I think we've gotten a lot of feedback. A lot of people love the product. A lot of people maybe sometimes have, it is a relatively a pretty comprehensive trading interface. So obviously there is a lot of stuff that kind of pops up when you first load the app. And for us, so moving to the margin side of things instead of staying on the spot side of things, I think for the biggest gotcha that we have is that we really want to try and keep the entire process of borrowing and repaying debt as straightforward and abstract that as much as possible to the user, which is what we've done in part, and which we're planning on improving as we go as well. We really want to try and people when they trade on margin, they want in crypto. I think personally that most people, as soon as they want leverage, they go to their traditional perps, Binance perps or whatever. And if you want to replicate that kind of experience on chain with margin, you really have to kind of abstract away the entire process of borrowing, repaying, managing your debt into a more straightforward and perps approach, right? So that's what we're really trying to focus on here. With, for example, the introduction of the position and allowing people to directly unwind the position in one go.
I love it. I love the focus on abstraction. It's basically making finance less scary, and especially as we get to more complex use cases, it's a perfect mashup. So with that, I do want to just call out more broadly for the broader audience here. We will collectively not only be recording a lot of what's in this talk, but also meshing it up to ensure that people have access to a lot of these demos. There's plenty of gold here in terms of understanding what it actually looks like to engage in Sui DeFi. And so prioritizing that is definitely going to be something as we think about on the DeepBook side and on the Sui side, making it easier for people to actually engage confidently in Sui DeFi. But with that, I do want to also call out for the broader panel here, if there are others that have questions and they want to hop in, hey, this is free flowing, more than welcome to hop in. But if not, I would be more than excited to first, Cyrus, really appreciate you walking me through this. And Chris, would love to have you come up next and kind of go through the same exercise on Pebble.
All right. Kudos to the Abyss team. I think first you have done an amazing work. So yeah, I'm really happy with what you have built. I think it's really amazing. Talking about Pebble, so we are a leverage layer built on the existing Sui DeFi. So that means we are just, I would say, enhancing, improving what other Sui DeFi protocol are already doing. And the foundation of Pebble is, of course, a lending and borrowing protocol. And on top of that, we have two products. One is margin, one is multiply, that are using leverage for, let's say, offering more capital efficiency. Today, I would like to go deeper into multiply because this is, I would say, our unique selling point and where we really differentiate and where we have very good, let's say, use case for working with Abyss and DeepBook. So very soon, you will see DBUSDC available in multiply strategies. Maybe for the audience to understand what is multiply. Multiply is a one-click leverage on yield-bearing assets. So leverage is good. Leverage means when you're able to basically borrow to make your capital more efficient and achieve more yield. So it's good as long as you can borrow cheap APY and you're holding an asset, so a yield-bearing asset in that case, with a much higher APY. So concretely, DBUSDC, I think right now you are at 13-14% APY, which is already amazing, but we can go even further. Let's imagine here this 13-14. Imagine that you already deposit in Abyss Vault. You are holding a DBUSDC token. Okay, then you could use these DBUSDC tokens as a collateral on Pebble. So first we are we are renaming to current. This is why also you see a new layout here. Imagine you are depositing your DBUSDC. You can select the leverage. and you can see that your net APR will be much higher than the original one. So this is possible because basically in the background, you are able to borrow USDC at, for example, 4%, 5%, and hold much more DBUSDC that are generating 13, 14%. So in that case, of course, it makes sense to borrow, to use leverage. Yeah, so in the coming weeks, you can see like much more integration with LSTs on Sui, with, of course, DBUSDC. So this is completely new, just adding another utility for the DBUSDC holder to keep holding forever. So yeah, we will communicate in the next few days our launch. So stay tuned.
I wanna jump in here real quick and highlight something. So first, Cyrus, can you know, recently we've had a lot of liquidations actually, and there is a reason why the DBUSDC yield-bearing asset is actually producing that 14% APY. I know we got like a little bit of incentives, but there's a few other things that are going on there, right? And I think it's important to highlight like what the difference is between DBUSDC and the risk profile that it has compared to, for example, like you know, a regular yield-bearing stable coin that's like more like kind of like a passive yield, like Athena, right? That they have like a lot lower yield. So like maybe this is a good opportunity to touch on like where this extra yield is coming from, and how you know what impact it's going to have like on Current and the multiply product that they're offering.
For sure, yeah. I think like in general, the primitive that DBUSDC kind of introduces is really interesting because, say, you know, if you take traditional like lending markets or whatever, whenever you're depositing, you know, people want to earn, if you have say USDC or whatever, and you want to be earning yield on top of that, because obviously it's kind of a, you know, it's kind of a safe bet. The traditional go-to in DeFi is to really just deposit that stablecoin inside a lending market and then earn the interest from borrowing fees. So in that sense, that usually works pretty well. But where DBUSDC kind of differs is that on top of that, because obviously, you know, DBUSDC is earning interest from borrowers and traders who are taking on leverage on DeepBook. There's also like the entire kind of margin trading activity that adds on top of that, where you have, for example, like you said, in the recent kind of market events, you know, with tokens kind of plunging, there have been some liquidations, and DBUSDC kind of absorbs all of that as well. And on top of, say, you know, traditional like interest accrued from borrowing, you're also going to have you know, liquidation fees and things like that that are going to be accruing on top of DBUSDC, adding on top of that lending yield. So in our case, you know, you do have a bit of incentives, but I think, when was it, yesterday or something like that, we had a pretty good amount of liquidation yield that was actually being redistributed directly to DBUSDC.
Unfortunately, you know, the liquidations are not in the direction that we want to see them in, but still they're adding a, you know, extra natural yield. And I think that's the point that I want to highlight here. We're introducing a primitive that creates real yield, you know, and we want to, and that's an important thing to distinguish here, right? The real yield is coming from actual usage of the protocol. And this is much more valuable compared to, like, you know, just passive yield or yield that's like, you know, coming from incentives and things like that. So the liquidation rewards are really helping here. And I think it's going to be an interesting way. I'm really interested in understanding how it's going to work with the multiply product that you guys have, Chris, at Pebble or Current, because there's going to be a little bit of a calibration period, right, for you guys to really understand what is the actual leverage that we want to apply to the looping here. Because while DBUSDC does get more yield than just like a traditional lending, it does have a little bit more risk too, right? So how do you kind of think about that, and how do you incorporate that into your product?
Okay, I think it's a very good question, and I think the Abyss team already have some on the answer. When I'm taking an example, is like, of course, the pool, Cyrus, correct me, but have some limitation. So in terms of size, so what I mean is like there is already some caps and some smart, I would say, risk management from the Abyss team in order to ensure first that the yield is stable. I think this is also important. We don't want to see a yield that is 1% and going to crazy 20% the next day. And this is necessary for Multiply to work. We need stability in some way. Because basically our user will compare the borrow rate over the last 7 months or 7 days or a month, and they will compare that exactly the same for what if I'm using Multiply with DBUSDC. So I would say that yes, there is this period of calibration that we are expecting, but in a way that, as you mentioned, it's authentic. So it's coming from the trading volume of people. So there is not much that will happen. Like people will always trade. People will always use leverage, especially in this period of volatility where there is good opportunity to make. So that's why I'm very positive. But I would like to hear a serious point on that as well.
100%. One question, Chris, for you, in kind of similar fashion to how I was closing out with Cyrus. Like, I'd love to understand really, thematically, like you've now been really integrated within the Sui ecosystem and have probably seen certain benefits from certain components of what either the platform offers or the ecosystem offers. Like, are there certain things specifically that really helped you along your journey, whether it was like specifically DeepBook, whether it was components of like the Sui protocol itself? Like, were there certain things that really stood out to you that made your journey into launching easier or like surprisingly harder? Would love to just kind of get your retro now being in the Sui ecosystem for a while.
Okay. I think if there is one thing that I will remember is like we do have a strong case for many DeFi protocol on Sui. And I think everyone is getting it very quickly. So that made introduction and collaboration very, very easy with everyone. So especially with LST, like issuers, now there is more and more yield-bearing assets on Sui. This one is back to USDC, but we can expect with Bitcoin. Let's do the same with Sui. So what I mean is like when you bring value to an entire ecosystem, of course, it will take time to do the technical integration. We need to do things well, but I'm expecting people to hold their asset much more and to use smartly the leverage that we offer with Multiply in order to keep holding Sui and Sui assets and even, let's say, promote that and become, let's say, champions of the Sui DeFi ecosystem. And I hope that this gonna just continue to spread.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, like, if I can just add on top of that, I think that, right now the building blocks for a really like broad and productive DeFi ecosystem on Sui are really being built, and we're really starting to see these integrations and like Chris said, like these the composability that's being added on top of Sui DeFi. In the early months of Sui, it was DeFi was very isolated. It was you had it was mostly about like just making tokens on top of Sui liquid, and whether it be through dexes and AMMs or lending markets. But now we're starting to see these new kind of primitives, and in the future, we really hope to see even more primitives being built. For example, for on top of margin, there's new like PT fixed yield primitives that can be added, and that's really bringing kind of Sui to a point where I think that the goal is really to reach kind of the composability and the diversity in DeFi products that you would see on, say, ecosystems like Ethereum, which have been around for a long time, but now really have very diverse ecosystems and super composable ecosystems. And I think that we're really on the right path on Sui to offer that.
But yeah, I really like the positioning of that. It really is something that is quite forward-looking and pretty aspirational, and the idea that there's quite a bit more that can be added, but this composability concept is probably very underrated for a trader, and understanding how you can just collectively add more and more building blocks and just really make expressive finance applications in a pretty seamless way. So that definitely really much lands. Now, myself specifically, let's say I'm a relatively beginner trader. Let's say I'm even hesitant on the idea of engaging in DeFi, and I'm looking for advice. I'm looking for someone to be able to say, like, hey, like, this is like a safe time. It's good to engage now, even with new products, whether it be margin or not. Like, this is a good time to engage. Like, what is the advice you would give a relatively new DeFi builder in terms of engaging, especially knowing that user acquisition within the space can be very challenging at times? And maybe let's start with Chris. This will be more of an open-ended conversation for everybody.
Okay. You meant a DeFi trader or DeFi user? Like,
yeah.
Okay. I think my first advice would be get to know on most of the most important protocol on Sui. Use them, understand what you can do. And also, like, you need to understand your own goal. Is your goal and your strategy is, let's say, delta neutral and you are more unstable? Are you directional and a trader doing swing trading, and then you can trade, of course, let's say, major coins and altcoins on Sui. So understand I would say, your psychology, because what do you want to achieve? Do you want to achieve do you want security and low risk and yield on stable coin, for instance? Or are you do you want directional strategies and trade? I think know yourself. Like, if you are a pro trader and basically you are excellent at that, why not using leverage? Like, understand clearly what is your goal, I think, and what are the tools that you can use is the key.
I love it. Let's go to Cyrus.
Yeah, for sure. I think, well, if I had to kind of give advice about this, I think I completely agree with what Chris said, and if I could add, maybe I think, like, as more complex and kind of diverse primitives emerge in the ecosystem, I think jumping into those is maybe not the best idea initially. I think what's great is, if you can get familiar with, like, the super basic primitives, like, okay, how does lending work? If I go on Sweland or Navi, like, how do if I provide tokens to the lending pool, how does that work? Where is the yield coming from? Understanding where the different fees and yield sources are coming from, I think is super important to really kind of grasp easily maybe more complex primitives. And then, once you feel familiar with that, you should definitely try out more complex protocols, more interesting approaches. But yeah, like, just getting familiar and really understanding how these basic building blocks work, I think really facilitate and bring down the barrier to entry for maybe more complex DeFi afterwards.
100%. Yeah, it's a bit of a journey. Naturally, as we add margin as a new capability, that's going to be a step forward. And it is something where, when we think about DeepBook and its role, a big component of this is education. And so being able to service not only the grasping of the DeFi 101, but getting people through assets, like whether it be a conversation here today with demos, showing how margin works and showing how some of these capabilities work. That is the aspiration. So this advice really lands very well, and it will tie very closely to how we think about, progressing what content looks like and how we're servicing the broader DeFi community. Because I can imagine for both of you guys, even with fantastic applications, user acquisition within the space can be challenging. And so it's something that we want to collectively do it together with you guys. And so this advice is spot on. So, and with that, Aslan, any last bits of advice that you would want to add on to it?
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate what Cyrus said. The question, where is the yield coming from, is probably the most important question you can ask whenever you're doing anything in DeFi. And a lot of people learned this the hard way with, in DeFi summer, DeFi 1.0, where, everybody was thinking that, there's just free money falling from the sky and not really realizing that how much of a role incentives play in everything. But I think that's a very good first start. But it is all about just getting some exposure, just trying different things and understanding, what kind of experiences different products offer. And with margin, I think one of the challenges right now, at least, is everybody's very familiar with perps because they're siloed protocols. You have an account, you put money in, and everything happens in one kind of a black box, and then you just withdraw money out, and then you can go back and do the rest of the DeFi stuff. But what we're doing with DeepBook and Margin, right? It is composable with everything else in DeFi, but maybe that is adding a little bit to the challenge because now it kind of works together with everything else, and it's not really a single box that you just go in and then you go out. It gets combined in a lot of different places. So I can see how that creates a little bit of confusion, but I think that's natural, right? We are really trying to build something new and unique that hasn't really been tried before, and there will be a lot of challenges like this that we have to solve for. But I think eventually users will catch on and they'll realize that the thing that we're building is very much DeFi native and crypto native, and it highlights the composability aspect of it, and it just works a lot better with everybody else together. And we are going to capitalize on a strength of the whole here. So the more protocols we can get to collaborate and work together, the better the DeFi ecosystem will, the stronger the DeFi ecosystem will become.
I agree, and I think also users can also really push for this, whether it be in like protocol communities on Discord or whatever. Like, I think it's also the job of the protocol to really try and break down step by step, like you said, all of the different steps, all of the different like mechanisms, where the yield comes from. I think this is really something that we as protocols should really also focus on is trying to break everything down as much as possible, because in the end, it's finance, it's people's money. If people want to start using apps and want to deploy their funds to different protocols, but even if it's a little bit or whatever, I think people feel way more confident when they really understand and the protocol really explains to them how everything works and where everything is coming from.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Now, with that, we're talking a lot in terms of advice, in terms of how we engage, and even basic 101 DeFi, as well as engaging in some of the more exciting new use cases related to margin. But we're still very early in this journey of how big DeepBook and how servicing it can be for the broader Sui DeFi ecosystem. So maybe with that, Aslan, I'd kind of love to just get more of your more forward-looking take. So margin is now live; it's growing pretty rapidly. But what do next steps look like for you? When we think about these new use cases and we think about servicing traders end to end, what else comes to mind? Whether it's improvements to the protocol, whether it's doubling down on things like margin and getting more diversity of margin use cases, what are the things that excite you going forward?
Oh boy, there's a million different things I can talk about here, but fundamentally, we're focused on the fully on-chain component. So everything is transparent. It's native to Sui. So we're going to continue making sure everything is fully on-chain with the infrastructure that we build out. We're going to continue scaling margin, expect more markets, expect higher leverage, expect raising the caps. I know for the USDC pool, it got filled instantly even after, and then we raised it, and then it got filled instantly again. So we're going to do more there. One of the other main things that we'll enable is cross margin, so you can use your position as collateral in other markets and get more interesting trading experiences through there. And there is now kind of this pattern that's being built. Okay, we had DeepBook, that's core, that's the foundational liquidity layer. Now we added margin, which is an extension, and what margin has enabled is so many different things, right? We have the leverage trading. We have the margin pools that users can deposit to. We have the yield token that you can use in Multiply and through Pebble and Current or through other lending protocols. We have other interesting types of integrations with the margin pools in isolation versus together with DeepBook Core as well. And this really paints the picture of like, okay, we added one extra capability, one extra extension to DeepBook, and now we're getting these 5, 6, 7 different totally unique use cases. So what happens when we add the next capability? I'm not going to tell you guys what it is, but like just imagine what could be possible, right? The number of totally different unique experiences, new products that you can offer when there are multiple modular components just increases exponentially. Not exponentially, but like it multiplies, so that's going to be the focus here. So like, what do we build next, and how does that natively combine with everything else, with both DeepBook, Margin, as well as all of the other DeFi protocols in the ecosystem? And we're going to focus on one, making it so users can do more things and get access to more assets and can trade a lot of unique, fun, interesting things when directly on Sui without having to leave Sui. And two, we're going to make these building blocks, more of them, and we're going to make it easier for builders to come in and build interesting experiences, leveraging these building blocks. And then we're going to build the system out where we handle a lot of the heavy lifting on the liquidity side and building out this infrastructure, and allow the applications themselves to focus on the application and the distribution and the user acquisition, and just enabling that UX for the users without having to worry about getting liquidity or having to find people to deposit capital into their protocol, et cetera, et cetera. So that is kind of the vision for the next 6 to 12 months, and with the ultimate goal of enabling more experiences for our everyday users on Sui.
Yeah, that really is a pretty strong point right there, and the fact that there is both depth and then breadth of use cases. So depth in the sense that Margin, so many different components in which Margin can add a new capability, do something you've never seen, and another L1 as an example. Like, there's quite a bit of depth there, where now that Margin is live and you're already seeing like the 2 projects that we have on the stage right now, looking at creative ways to go deeper and explore other ways in which you can really use that Margin product to create something that's completely new and creative. But then separately, to Aslan's point, like the breadth side of thing talks about other capabilities. And so when we think about the future, not only as we think about capturing feedback and understanding where the market is and understanding where our strengths are, there's a real opportunity to start capitalizing on, gathering that feedback of what we think about another capability. What does that look like? What are people actually looking for? Like, what are the real opportunities where we see quite clear product market fit, or areas that haven't really even been touched yet? So on both sides, short term, very much around this idea of depth. How deep can we go with Margin? And longer term, more around the idea of breadth and where do we go next? So quite a bit there. Very exciting. I do want to just call out for the broader listening group here. We will be at a certain point publishing a broader roadmap in terms of what the direction for 26 looks like. It will provide more like high directional framing, and will provide more of an opportunity to just reinforce the idea of like, what exactly is DeepBook here to do? And how is it here really exclusively focused on making Sui DeFi builders successful? So with that, hopefully this is helpful. One last thing I just do want to call out for the broader audience here is, we mentioned at the beginning of this call, this idea of the DeepBook points program. Now, this is something that's relatively new and does tie in with DeepBook more broadly and not exclusively to Margin. And the concept here is that anyone that is in any capacity directly tied into the DeepBook ecosystem does have a direct connection point to the points program. There's natural prioritization on new use cases and really get a lot of testing and feedback in terms of how things like Margin is working. But I do want to emphasize that this is a really exciting points program that expands across the entirety of the DeepBook ecosystem. With that, we'll be looking to always provide more information and sharing more resources to just make sure that everyone has what they need to understand how to engage. But what we're really excited about is just, how can we get as much regular feedback on what's working and what's not within DeepBook, and really having people pressure test a lot of like the fantastic applications that we have within the ecosystem. But with that, maybe Aslan, if there's any other thing that you would add on the DeepBook Points program or any other thing that we'd want to share to just like clear up any sort of ambiguity, any area there, would love to you as well.
Yes. First of all, shout out to Abyss for adding the points into their app. It's going to be nice to have that there. I know Cetus also added it, and we're going to try to get a lot of the participating projects to add the DeepBook points on their web UI to make it easier for everybody to access their points. I know you can also see it in the Slush wallet, but yeah, the more places we get that added to and with more visibility, the better. But let's again, like I want to highlight, Amir, what you said about like what is the purpose of the DeepBook Points program, right? We just launched Margin, and we are testing it. We're trying to understand exactly how users are taking it, what feedback we can get from it. So while points is given to everybody that uses DeepBook at any capacity, like if your transactions touch DeepBook packages, then you end up getting points. What we value more are users that actually use these third-party apps built directly on DeepBook or leverage DeepBook in different ways. So if you are using Abyss, if you're using Pebble, if you are using DeepTrade or any of these or Lotus or the protocols that are built on DeepBook, then you get a priority. You get those experience those actions get more points essentially than just passive actions. So I would love everybody to like try out the products, give us feedback. The ultimate goal is that like you guys will try things out and tell us what is good, what is bad, and how we can improve. And the points program is there to reward that type of activity.
And one thing I'll just call out logistically is that there's really two ways to engage. You can either directly go to the landing page specifically directly within the DeepBook website, or separately there is like a direct integration to call out through the Slush wallet with a special boost tied to the Slush wallet engagement. So there's multiple ways to engage, but again, feedback is critical. Feedback is what we value. We want to make sure that in every way that DeepBook is servicing Sweet DeFi, that we're really getting a lot of pressure testing and making sure that everything is working so that we know when we go into the next capability, what worked, what didn't, so we can make it as seamless as possible for Sweet DeFi builders. So with that, I want to close on one last thing. Naturally, everyone that's on this call is going to be wondering, okay, well, this is great. Like I learned a lot, but like, what is my next step? And so when we think about CTAs for everyone here, and I'm going to go across everyone on this call, what is that CTA, whether it's engaging in your protocol, whether it's like keeping an eye out for something that's coming up next, and then Aslan more broadly, like what's next in terms of how people should engage with DeepBook more broadly. What is that CTA that you would love to be able to bring forward to the audience here? And maybe Chris, let's start with you.
Okay. 2nd of March, we're going to launch a protocol. I want to see people using our multiply with DBUSDC.
Love it. Cyrus?
Yeah, we want to see people depositing in the vaults, and again using protocols that leverage RA tokens like Pebble and things like that, and obviously trading on margin and trading on Abyss.
And Aslan?
I want to see people trading on margin. I want to see some degen activities here. I'll be honest, but not financial advice. But I want to see people making money. All right. So I would love to get people to engage with margin, but overall, I think take a serious tone here. All the users that have already tried some of these products and shared the feedback, thank you guys so much. All of that feedback is super valuable and actionable, and we have been working really hard to take advantage of what you've given us. So we are actively making all of the products better, and we're actively working on improving the experience on Sui. So keep doing what you're doing, keep sharing your experiences with us, keep tagging me on Twitter or hit me up. I'm always here for you guys.
I love it. That's such a great way to close it out. So with that, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone on the call. Aslan, Cyrus, Chris, like this was a super fun space, and it's the first of many that we're going to look to do here. Our goal at DeepBook is to make it as easy as possible, whether you're a builder or a trader, to engage in Sweet DeFi. We want to be that resource there that makes it incredibly easy to add capabilities, get access to liquidity, and have everything you know to go from zero to revenue. And while this is all not financial advice, we are here to be able to provide support, provide education, and just make this a really enjoyable experience for you guys, because crypto is not supposed to be frustrating. Crypto is supposed to be exciting and engaging, and it should be, frankly, incredibly simple to engage, whether you're a beginner or whether you're advanced. So with that, want to again thank everyone else here, and looking forward to having more spaces. And for everyone that's looking to learn a little bit more about DeepBook as well and everything that we're doing, definitely check out the website and keep an eye out on our socials, where we'll be having quite a bit more in terms of additional moments we'll be sharing and ways to engage and learn more about Sweet DeFi. But with that, I really appreciate you guys, and talk soon.